Things in the funeral industry are changing and for the better. Today, we're going to be talking with Diana Robinson from Celebrations of Life Toronto. Diana offers this incredible, unique, bespoke experience. It's like a one call, do it all. Diana knows everything to do with celebrations of life. And what makes her really special is that she has been a funeral director for over 20 years. So she knows everything you need to know about the industry, how to navigate things. And she also knows how to speak to you, how to deal with you, how to guide you through the process in a gentle, considerate, and loving manner with an open heart. And that's really what you want when you're hiring somebody to help you navigate somebody's end of life and somebody's exit. So pay attention, take down notes, and enjoy this next talk with Diana Robinson from Celebrations of Life Toronto.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, Diana Robinson from Celebrations of Life. I am so excited to have this opportunity to talk to you because it is it's such an unknown of services out of the industry these days. And what I've learned is that you can have anything you want when it comes to your celebration of life. So I'm so pleased to speak to you about this, Diana. And so why don't we just start with tell me about yourself and how you got into this business in the first place?
Yes, thank you so much, Diana, for having me also. Um, yes, I got into this business what seems like a long time ago. I was 17 years old when I first became interested in looking at funeral services, and I started working at my local small town funeral home and just doing a little part-time work. And then I decided to pursue it and go to Humber College for my funeral director's education diploma, and then got licensed by the provincial board after that. So I was a licensed funeral director for just over 20 years, and
Wow.
I got to work at a variety of places, including a 4-year stint in Japan where I was an embalming specialist. But most of my experience was working in the funeral homes, doing a little bit of everything, arranging with families, directing funerals, and yeah, washing cars, vacuuming carpets, whatever you can think of. Uh,
Wow. So you started really early. You started
yeah,
young.
yeah, I was quite young. And then almost 5 years ago, I left my career in the funeral homes to start my own business, which is Celebrations of Life Toronto. I now do specialty event planning for bereaved families, doing memorials, receptions, and the like, all outside of the funeral home setting at any number of beautiful venues around Toronto.
I love the idea of having a celebration of life instead of what we used to call it wakes. And we still call memorials. Like, are there other names? Things are evolving, I know, so much in this industry. Can you just shed some light on what are people calling it these days? Is it just celebrations of life or
Celebrations of life is has definitely become like a familiar vernacular for people, which is certainly why I named my business Celebrations of Life Toronto. I wanted to connect with people who had kind of had that idea. However, there are still a multitude of names for what people do. A funeral typically does refer to something that takes place in either a funeral home or possibly a church or temple setting. It could also, refer to a service that's being held at a cemetery graveside. And wake, although I don't know all of the origins, I do know it's definitely Irish. And to a lot of people, awake means a time of celebration or maybe a bit of levity after funeral services have taken place.
right?
In my business, I get, quite a few families where celebration of life does not maybe resonate with how they're feeling, and that makes sense. For some people, it's not, it's not a celebration. It's still something that's somber, and those people might call it a memorial, a remembrance, an honoring.
So why do you think that there's this sort of explosion of all these different services now? And why did you feel at this time was a good time for you to get out of the funeral director business and go into this more, um, I guess happier sort of celebration of this process?
Yeah, for some people, it is happier. It's an opportunity to reflect on more joyous aspects, and for other people, it's just a change of setting that provides more value, personalization, and customization. And yeah, that probably has. I mean, these changes have been taking place for 50 years, gradually. Um, Starting around 50 years ago, the cremation statistics started to raise. I mean, it went from, you know, I forgot my statistics, maybe under 35% of all Canadians being cremated to now where, it's well over the majority.
Yes, yes, I was speaking with your colleague there and all about that, and it's yeah, seems to be the rising trend to be cremated. And so,
Yeah.
do you think that that is the reason why now we're able to have these other services, and why you felt like it was time for you to
Uh,
branch out and
yeah, that was one part of it. Another part of it was really like a secularism, and also multiculturalism. So a lot of
right?
people have moved away from communities that we might have in the past connected better with. So we had a community maybe through our church or through our temple or through our culture. So that, along with the rise of cremation, and certainly the baby boomers very much set a large trend that was all about customization, personalization, and the individual. So, what might have previously been a cookie cutter kind of, funeral service, the value in that has really changed to people want it to really reflect, their loved one who they're celebrating rather than the rituals surrounding it.
Right, that makes total sense. And when my father passed away during COVID, we didn't really have anything prepared. And then a year later, we did just an online, like very, very intimate memorial for him. And it just felt right. So yeah, it's interesting the way things are evolving. And I love though the fact that we can actually have like a gathering and a celebratory gathering after as well, and that it's so commonplace now. Well, I don't know, is it commonplace? It's commonplace because I can call you up.
Yeah,
And
I think it's common now. Most people you talk to now are going to celebrations of life just as much as or more than funerals. Um, And to speak to your question about why I thought now is the time, or 5 years ago when I kind of started this business, it was the right time for me on a personal level because I had made some, I guess, decisions about how I wanted to move ahead in life. And, you know, part of that was that for 10 to 15 years, I had been seeing this trend in the funeral homes and with the clients that we were serving, that these families were looking for more and different. And then some of the personal changes that took place for me was that I knew I was able to serve at a different level. And yeah, I wanted to explore that potential as well as some of the creative aspects of celebration of life planning that we didn't have access to in the funeral home.
yeah, I think that's really brilliant. I actually love the way things are evolving in the funeral industry and having those options. Tell me more about what you do. Say I'm a client and I come to you like I sort of thought, like I had expressed with my father or even my mother after the fact, and we wanted to do a celebration of life. Tell me how would you prepare me? What should I be thinking about? What do you feel is productive when a client comes to you? Where should they look first? Where should they sort of get inspiration, or what are the questions that they should have answered in their mind before they come to you, or what are the questions you ask them?
Well, a lot of people come to me and they don't know what they don't know what to be thinking about. A lot of people, all they know is that they don't want to do something in a traditional setting. They do want to have a memorial or a celebration of life that is personal. So yeah, some people have no details, and then there's other people who have a full vision. So they have a venue in mind that's, special to the family. It makes sense for the location. Um, they know certain aspects of the person's life that they want to highlight. They want to have a memory table that definitely includes a lot about, say, this person's Scottish heritage, or this person's collection or memorabilia. Um, in what I do, I guess, as a whole. So I should say people can call me without, they don't have to have thought about anything. But once they do call me, I usually share with people. There's kind of 4 pillars of what I do in terms of full planning. So arrangements and coordination. And those arrangements that I do with families to get started, that's what helps me to discover, what they need, what does make sense. And it allows me to learn about their loved ones so that I can start to make suggestions, pair venues with them, and offer some other creative ideas that are going to make sense and resonate with them. The next pillar is, around design and styling. So helping to offer creative concepts and designs. It's often subtle and gradual, celebrations of life. They're certainly not weddings. So I think there's, a more elegant and subtle kind of cohesion of the creative elements.
Mm.
And then there's also, of course, staffing and day of management. So explaining to people how I'll be involved on the actual day and what types of things I'd be taking care of for them, which is usually managing just all the vendors so that they're able to be present.
Mhm.
Not worrying about, are the canapes, coming out on time, or,
Yeah,
the slideshow's got a glitch. Yeah, and then I guess finally, event logistics. So all the preparation, itineraries and timelines, and how I kind of get them prepared and get myself prepared.
that's
During
a go ahead. That's a lot. Go ahead.
yeah. So those are
I'm
the
impressed.
four pillars for most event planners, and then of course, what's specific to me as a memorial planner. But yeah, arrangements, staffing, design, logistics. And those arrangements, so this is where, I ask a series of questions where people really start to get thinking about things. And so, as I kind of mentioned, the venue, that's a big thing. It really sets the tone and the atmosphere. It's one of the biggest decisions that people will make. There's also, I ask them about invitations. Invitations digitally have become a lot more popular, especially post-COVID. People really want to send out an invitation. It often includes an RSVP. Some of
Now,
the
did they do that, or do you arrange that for them?
Yeah, I arrange that for them. Some people
Mm.
like to have a high level of detail and customization in terms of design and what the invitation looks like, and then other families will leave it with me. And I use Greenvelope, which is a subscription service. It's got high functionality. It really suits most of the families, and they've got, thousands of designs to choose from.
Nice. That sounds amazing. So it's a big deal. It's a lot to coordinate.
It most definitely is. Yeah. Like there's a lot of other elements. I talk about audiovisual elements with families. If we're having photo slideshows, music playlists, live musicians, microphones, speakers. A lot of families like to do either live stream or recordings now. And
Mm.
and when we get further into details, we talk about, of course, food and beverage, which is always very important. Um, talk about florals, the memory table design, which I'd already kind of mentioned.
Mhm.
all sorts of memorial selections, things like guest books and cards and framed portraits, connecting people with celebrants. And there's always the custom. Really, I tell most families if they can think of it or envision it, I can usually execute for them.
Wow, that's really exciting to know that you can do all that stuff. Now, tell me what has been the trend like in a memorial service? Like what do people actually do? I've been to a few celebrations, memorials where um but not so much celebrations. I'm trying to remember if I've ever been to one that was truly a celebration. Not yes and no, kinda, with sort of those elements, but not in a big way. Um, Now, do you encourage people to go up and talk about the the deceased? Like how is it presented? Do the family members go up and, do make a speech? Do they like how weird and wild does it get? Like do people like if they're family musicians, I guess would they play music? Would what like it's like an open book. You can do whatever you want. But what in
Yes.
your case do you see as being
Yeah,
popular?
yeah, there's I'm struggling to even think of one client I had where there wasn't some element of, say, a speech at the very least.
Hmm.
So I would say that, and that would be just a reception. So that might make more sense as an accompaniment to maybe a funeral service, that it's a post-reception type of period. But for most of the clients that I serve, they haven't had any other type of services. And what they are envisioning is a reception, to be sure, with food and drink. They almost always envision a slideshow and music of some kind. And I would say a minority, but a significant amount of people want to do a formal ceremony
Mm,
as part of the celebration of life. So it's something that's usually between 45 minutes and an hour. There's often multiple speakers. There could be definitely audiovisual elements. So whether that's live musicians from the family performing, or something that comes up on the screen, they'll have multiple speakers. And often there'll be a celebrant or somebody from the family that they've asked to, kind of coordinate, master of ceremonies. Uh, I would say, however, the majority of the families I serve are looking to do something more casual, which is just some speeches, just have some people speak.
right.
And what I usually recommend for those people is that either myself or maybe somebody in the family is at the very least kind of leading things along. So just saying welcome, getting things going by inviting the first speaker up. I usually make some other recommendations around timing for people, like if we want to do this for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, that means we could have, 5 or 6 speakers who each share for 3 to 5 minutes. So yeah, every
Oh, good.
situation is ultimately unique, and I would offer specific suggestions for those families.
Right. So yeah, it could get really out of control if you don't have that structure for sure.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like people really, the majority of them, they want to have this casual feel. They
Mm,
don't want the celebration of life or the memorial to feel maybe stuffy or over planned. However, a lot of them realize that having some structure in behind the scenes kind of helps make things look casual and seamless on the day of. Certainly at the funeral homes, I saw some open mics go wrong, where somebody came up and maybe it wasn't the favorite family member, and this person, spoke for 20 to 30 minutes, and you know, that makes it difficult for everybody. So having some
yeah.
timelines and some preparation, like, hey, Uncle so and so, you've got 8 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, is there alcohol usually served at these events?
Yeah, I would say probably 60% at least. I do definitely get some non-alcoholic requests
Yeah.
non-alcoholic event requests. But no, the majority people want to have alcohol. There is, I'd say most commonly a limited bar, which is wine and beer.
Right.
And so that kind of helps set the tone for people that this isn't, a free for all. This isn't a shots and cocktails or hard liquor, that they want people to enjoy responsibly. Yeah, so things don't get too nutty.
Too wild and crazy. That's going to be my celebration of life.
Yeah, and if there's going to be some people out there who want that to be, it's not
Yeah.
an issue in their friend and family group to
Yeah.
encourage that type of celebration.
Yeah. And now, do you see a common trend in the age at which the family member um, has passed? Like, is there a trend in the age where you see these celebrations of life? Like, would you see a celebration of life with someone who is in their 90s, the same kind of celebration of life as someone in their, say, 30s?
Um, Specific to my business, I serve a lot of families that seem to be a little younger, although I have had some that are honoring people who are in their 80s or 90s. I think the nature of my business is that I'm attracting people who have lost somebody young. So,
Mm,
50s and 60s seems to be the most common.
mm,
I have served families of people in their 30s that they've lost, which is always hard. But I think as a whole, and that's just specific to my business, I do think as a whole, all age ranges of people are now doing celebrations of life.
yeah.
And this is knowledge, directly from my mother, who is 79 and unfortunately attends a lot of funerals and memorials.
Oh,
And she definitely says she goes to way more celebrations of life now than she ever does funerals.
yeah. Yeah, it just makes sense, doesn't it? In a
Yeah.
way, we want to remember the person for how they were in life and celebrate them rather than, I mean, clearly we're mourning them, but it feels more right for me to know that there's a celebration of life. It just feels better. I don't know, just my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and it is individual because there is a lot of people still out there who are very connected to their religious rituals. So they are still
Yeah.
going to have Catholics who are having full masses. There's a lot of different cultural groups that have kind of very um
Hmm.
specific things that happen, with Hindus and Buddhists in Japan. And so there's people all over the world who are still doing something very traditional that's either linked to religion or their culture. But here
Yeah.
in Canada, it's becoming the minority.
Right. And now, have you ever been approached to do a celebration of life before the person has passed? Like a
I
living celebration of life?
Yes, I have a couple times, and I had actually looked into the idea of a living funeral a few years ago. It had some kind of interesting origins, which started in the 90s, I believe, with a pop star, or maybe an actress in Japan who was in perfectly good health, maybe in their 50s, and kind of started this trend.
Oh,
Unfortunately, the families that I have been in contact with, it was a little untenable because their health, they were in ill health at that time. Uh,
mm,
so I have not yet actually held one, although I planned a couple that didn't come to fruition. And yeah, I did a little workshop for a hospice, just introducing some of those ideas, as it could be
yeah.
something really healing for someone who is terminal, who is dying, and
Yeah.
wants to experience, yeah, the love and support, and hear, the ways in which they've affected their loved ones' lives. So I
Yeah.
love
I
the
love
idea.
I love that idea. I'm doing that. And there's gonna be all my friends, and we're just gonna have one big party. I think that what you offer is so significant and so important in the realm of funerals and exiting, and to have that option is really amazing because it just shows that things are opening up. Like options are just expanding in this industry, which I think is super important. Because I believe that things need to kind of just change with the times, clearly, as they tend to do. But the structure of a funeral, and I've been to a few, um, they're they're they can be very formal. And so I like hearing that we're celebrating in a more casual way, and where we can call you up and you can just do it all, because that's what I would want as well. Just call you up. This is what I want. Um, so also, have you found are there any particular trends in what people are wanting to do, like venue trends, color trends, food trends? Do you find that there's some trending going on?
Design is kind of interesting, colors and venues, because all of that exists in the design realm, and then it certainly informs a lot of what I do. So a lot of the families, same with food and beverage, it's very much within the venue, or the caterer kind of purview and what's being offered. So I do feel like it's always being kept fresh. Toronto and the surrounding areas has, like, I think really outstanding hospitality in
Mhm.
terms of venue and restaurants and catering, that are offering things that are, feel fresh, uh, and also classic, and, very done well. And trends, I mean, the trend to do a celebration of life, is certainly the biggest trend. And I know this sounds maybe a bit vague, but that customization piece is really kind of the trend, is people getting ultra personal. Like, how do I make this incredibly unique?
Mm.
I have recently been serving a family, and the gentleman who died was very young. They have two young children. It was very tragic. He was an enormous baseball fan,
Mm.
enormous Blue Jays fan, and also specifically of a player on another team. And so part of the celebration of life is, after the family's at the venue, they're going to be going to a live game with friends and family, and the Blue
Nice.
Jays are playing this particular team, that has a player who is one of, this man's favorite. So it's just like, it's ultra custom, it's ultra personal. People just
Right.
really like wanting to take that extra step.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's really special. It's so nice to hear that. And so you are specific to Toronto, but this really is a growing trend within Canada. Do you service other provinces too, or you just kind of stick to our province,
Yeah,
Ontario?
I do, generally, do GTA, so Greater Toronto Area. Uh, During the pandemic, I was doing some online funerals, and so I was serving some people, from beyond, into
Mhm.
America and across Canada. But no, specific to the in-person planning that I do, it's really like, my core is around the Toronto area. Have a few clients in the King City and Aurora area. Um, Also, I have been a little further north. Um,
Yeah.
anything's possible.
Yeah. But you could still do things online, because I know for me, we had relatives in the States, some were in Yugoslavia, and we all came together, but in a not very organized way.
Yeah, yeah, having a hybrid, events where there is that in-person event or portion along with the live stream or recording, yeah, it really helps bring people in from everywhere.
I love that. That's a great idea. Yeah, technology is amazing, isn't it? Um, and so, you know, we talked about this before casually, but what kind of money would we need to put aside for a celebration of life? And I know that it's super personal, but if we were going to hire you, yeah, what would you expect someone to pay for the service?
Yeah, in total, I mean the clients that I typically serve would be maybe considered in either a premium or a luxury uh, level. So these
Hmm.
types of families are going to, some of the best venues in Toronto, ones that are probably very well known to a lot of people here, places like the Old Mill
Hmm.
or the Boulevard Club or the Henley Room, the
Yeah.
Broadview Hotel, beautiful Oliver and Bonacini properties. So these are all typical venues a lot of people have heard of. They might consider also for weddings, corporate meetings. So that's what I would say the most or the majority of the people I serve. And so it's in the higher end. Um, I would say in total, everything, my services, the venue, food, audio, visual, all these things could average right now, probably around $25,000. I
That's
have
not as bad as I thought it would be, honestly.
some are more,
Yeah.
and you can certainly do things for less.
Yeah. Because I mean, when you think of how much we spend on a wedding day, it's like a fraction of that.
Yes, yeah, they're
Yeah.
they're not as quite as detailed or elaborate, which makes sense, of course.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that, I have another question. Do people often give like mementos as well? Like, what's the kind of trend with that?
No, I really don't see
No.
that much at all. Um,
Okay.
I had read, about this idea, and there have been people who've done that type of thing.
Mm,
I read something about a woman who had loved gardening, and lavender was one of her prize items, and
mm.
the family had prepared, 50 little lavender pots
Yeah, that's lovely.
to give to each guest as they left. And I really like that idea. I think that's really
That's
sweet.
lovely.
I am serving a family right now, and they are intending to do something um, to give to each guest. The gentleman is Scottish, and they're doing these little, think it's called a wee pence, in a little tartan bag. So yeah,
Oh,
it's very
that's cute.
specific. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yes, there's tons of things you can do in that regard, though I just don't happen to see it very often at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the first kind of memorial I went to when I was young, and they gave you a card with the person's picture on it, you know.
Yeah, memorial cards, I don't get those quite as much. They
Mm,
along with guest books. So those are items that you would most definitely see at the funeral home in the past. They've fallen out of favor.
mm,
A lot of people
okay.
would take guest books home and put them into a shelf and never look at them again,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So there's not a ton of value, except that a lot of older generation people are still looking for a guest book. So a lot of families will just use my sample book for no fee, and we'll just put it out, and they keep the pages with the signatures. Memory cards, yeah, I get a few families who do them. I find them that I get more printed materials for the order of service when there is like a more formal ceremony or service portion. Uh,
Hmm.
so they'll have something nice printed that has, a program, and then also their loved one's picture on the front.
Oh, that's quite nice. Do you find that people who come to celebrations of life want to leave something, an experience, a story? Is there an opportunity for that, or is that not appropriate at that point?
Yeah, if there's the preparation is something I always encourage. So if a family wants to have an open mic, let's
Yeah.
say, I recommend they usually include that in the invitation. So that people,
Okay.
if they wanted, they could prepare something and let people
Yeah.
know we're gonna have 20 minutes of open sharing so that they know that there's, there's a time.
Yeah.
And mostly people let them know in advance. So it's very rare that I would have one where people would be surprised upon learning that there's going to be an open mic.
Right.
I do have quite a few families who are looking for photos from people.
Mm.
And again, they'll utilize the invitation to invite people, please share if you have any photos, please share them. They've got an email or maybe a drive that you can upload the photos to.
That's a great
Um,
idea. I like that.
mhm. And stories. Some people have worked on legacy projects where they've invited people to write their story and email it in for maybe a book the family is compiling. And then at the actual event, there is often, memory cards. So if people did want to share a memory,
Mm.
then they could. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea.
I wouldn't say people come with any expectations though, unless they've been, maybe briefed in
Notified.
advance. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea so much because it is all about sharing stories and celebrating, the relationships, right?
hmm Oh yeah,
Have
it's the best part.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you like when is your busy time? Are you busy? You're busy now, but is there like a
Yeah.
season that you found is more busy than others?
Well, fair weather, really. So spring
Mm.
and autumn seem to be the busiest for me.
Yeah.
We've been having a very fair winter, and so I have found myself in the last 3 months doing more than I might typically, especially January. January there was a few. And in
Yeah.
years past, people just completely avoided it because of weather and
Yes.
snowstorms and not wanting to ask people to drive. Uh,
Yes.
but yes, yeah, I would say typically spring. So March, April, May, June are all busy months. Uh, the summer slows down a little bit. People go away, and it also gets, it can get pretty hot in August. So July,
Mm.
August are usually not favorite times to hold an event. They also expect sometimes a lot of people are out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's really amazing. It is kind of like wedding season too, isn't it? Well, we kind of in the north we do that. We're more active fall and spring
Yeah.
and
Yes, yeah, there is definitely like May and June is definitely overlapping uh
yeah,
with wedding season, and then there's quite a few weddings in September still. Um so having to
yeah.
compete a little bit. However, like a funeral, it doesn't often depend on the time of year. It's people doing it when it happens. And there are still people who, when they've had a passing, they will contact me and they just want to do it in a week or two
Mm.
weeks or
I was
regardless of what time of
yeah,
year it is.
yeah. I was just gonna ask you, what's the timeline, between are you seeing when people come to you? Are they coming to you many months after, like immediately after? What are you seeing?
I I think probably most commonly on average within a couple weeks of the person's passing that I've been
Mm.
contacted. So when people contact me, they've usually already selected either funeral home or cremation business that's taking care of, the burial or the cremation. So they've got kind of those types of things underway, and they're starting to think about the celebration of life. So yeah, usually within a couple weeks. And then from there, I see quite a bit of different, timelines. Um, Less often, people who do 4 to 6 months ahead.
Mm. Mm.
Um, Less often would also be like, say, 1 to 3 weeks timeline, which can be a bit quick. And then most commonly, like within a couple months.
Right.
So 1 to 2 months. And that's kind of, to be honest, I think that's it's a good spot for people. Sometimes when it's too short, they don't have, they don't have the time maybe to do all the detailing that they'd like to do. And then with 5 to 6 months, it can start to, I think it can start to drag, and can become a bit of a burden on a family that's already grieving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know
That
how
makes
it
total
is.
sense.
The more time we get, the more things we change or we second guess or,
Yeah. 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 I like that. I think that makes total sense. So, so as we're planning our exit, we really do need to put away some funds for a celebration of life. And is there a way, I mean, obviously we can start start saving now, or like is there a special fund we can start? Is there, like, I know in the funeral industry, they actually, you can prepay for funerals and stuff like that. And but you don't, there's no services like that. Are is there for like
Um,
other
in my
things or
business, I don't do prepaid celebrations
mm,
of life at this time, although that might be something that makes sense down the road, depending on how the business changes or evolves and grows.
yeah.
Um, I do see that there are some funeral homes or funeral corporations that are expanding and wanting to expand into celebrations of life. And
Mm,
I suspect that they will have prepaid options in their offerings because that's a huge part of their funeral model, um, and their business.
mhm.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, my personal opinion is that people should definitely want, after, they've passed away, hopefully that, there's enough funds for people, their family, to take care of what needs to be taken care of,
Yeah.
and things can be done right. I think there's really good insurance products that are on the market specific to funerals and immediate after passing funds that are available to a family. So not
Mm,
things like life insurance where it's like waiting 3 to 4 months for those things to pay out, um, or, families taking care of estates and selling
yeah.
homes and assets. So my personal recommendation for people is to have a funeral related insurance product that, covers all the costs that are going to happen, let's say in the first few months after their passing.
I love that idea. I didn't even know that there was such a thing.
Yes, yeah, there is some really tailored things. So people, I mean, you wouldn't have to prepay for anything if you had, a dedicated fund. Let's say it's $50,000. A
Yeah,
dedicated fund that pays out to your family. They can take care of burial and cremation. They can maybe take care of some lawyers' fees, time off work
yeah,
if needed. A big, you know, elaborate
yeah,
celebration of life.
yeah. I like that. I have my my son's, she's not a daughter-in-law, but my son's girlfriend. She and her brother are actually putting a fund away to save for their parents' funeral. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
I know.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's so progressive and so selfless. Instead of saving for their kids, education, it's like they know that they're going to have to deal with their parents. Why not put a little away every month and have a fund just for that? Her and her brother both contribute every month, like nothing, like 20, $50, whatever it is. And so that they will have the money there to give their parents a good send off. Isn't that
Hmm.
wonderful?
Yeah. Yeah, I've never heard of that. That's really, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are thinking about that,
Yeah.
wanting to
Yeah.
prepare for their parents.
Yeah, but I love the idea of having like an insurance specific to funeral services, because that's one of the things that I found trying at times where I didn't have access to like my parents' funds and I'd have to use my credit card, and there was a lot of, and when you're in grief and you're trying to deal with all of the stuff, you don't want to have to think about money. You want it to
Mm-hmm.
be there when you need
Yeah.
it. So planning ahead for your celebration of life is so important. It is so important. Unless you know you're not going to have a celebration of life, but you don't know. I mean, if you want one, it would be lovely. And I personally will have one before I pass because I want to see everybody celebrating. And yeah, it's definitely something that's really super important. They could start. Everyone should really consider putting away some money and then bookmarking Diana if you're in Toronto and the GTA. But I'm loving this idea of having this resource and having your service that is so much is so bespoke, and it's so comprehensive. It's just I love the idea of picking up a phone and saying, I need this, this is what I want, or guide me through this, because the last thing you want to do is to have to think of food and catering and calling people and organizing things. Like, that's just not something people should be doing. You really should be able to call somebody and have it all taken care of.
Yeah, it is it's definitely a luxury for some people to be able to. However, it also feels very essential um to
Mhm.
need and receive support.
Yeah.
So for some families, it might be picking up the phone to enlist their friends and family and
Mhm.
saying, let's divide this work, or I need help and I need support. Um, because grief is so all consuming
Yeah.
in ways I think that we're not even aware of until afterwards. It's emotional,
Yeah.
it's physical, it's mental, and yes, planning any event. Um, there's a lot of details involved. And with, like you say, who wants to be doing venue research and, back and forth emails with a few venues for 2 weeks while they're experiencing um, their grief.
Listen, yeah, I mean, we didn't really have to do that, but I know that when my parents passed, just searching for like a monument place, and just the few little things we had to research, it was hard. So yeah, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend that you take on all that stuff when your loved one has passed, for sure. And
Hmm.
what I really love about what you offer, Diana, is that you're not just a celebrations of life person who's been in the industry for a few years or whatever. You've got an incredibly long history of being in this industry and knowing everything about it during your funeral directing director days, and knowing how it works, how the things that people are coming up against. So I'm sure that you offer so much more value in your experience that you can offer your clients, which is, I think, super important too. You want to get someone who knows the industry, understands what you're going through on every level to really truly do a good job for you.
Hmm. Yeah, every funeral director is different. I've always been very empathetic, and I always felt, I think, pretty deeply for the families that I was serving. Um,
Mhm.
and that's, probably not every funeral director. So that was my experience of it. Some people are good at, logistics or admin work. And there's all sorts of aspects, but that's something that is feedback that I receive from a lot of people throughout my career, is that there's an empathy and a compassion mixed with professionalism. And that's kind of my unique, I guess, proposition for people, is that I very much, endeavor to take the burden off of them by making them feel heard and understood. Um,
Yeah.
and only somebody I think that's worked with grieving families for over 20 years. Well, not even, it could be a couple years and you could be great at it. But yeah, I've just happened to have a lot of experience. and a lot of good experiences with families who have felt really well taken care of. I think that, unlike a large corporation, um, or even an independent business, I mean, I am starting this and it's grassroots and it's really built upon my love for people and my desire to serve grieving families.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that makes my heart swell so much. I I can't thank you enough, Diana, for coming on today and just telling us about this beautiful service that you're offering grieving people who are dealing with, loved ones who have passed, or people who just want to start planning and thinking about what they want for their funerals and their exits. So I really appreciate everything you've shared. Is there any last word that you wanted to conclude?
Um, see, well, I think conversation, yeah, everything that you're really sharing, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you for what you're doing to connect with people and share with people, because everything that you want to do and it is about helping to heal people and helping prepare people. So I think having conversations with yourself and with your family about what you want is really important. Yeah, so
Yeah.
thanks for the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Diana. And yeah, thank you again. And we'll see you again maybe next time with some more stories.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
for
Thanks,
joining.
Diana.
Okay.